Okay, let's dive right into this. Right now, we're witnessing what is honestly probably the largest, fastest capital build-out in human history. I mean, artificial intelligence is literally everywhere, and we keep hearing how it's going to completely revolutionize how we work, how we live, everything. But beneath the surface of this massive technological shift, there is a colossal financial mystery going on. We are looking at this huge, glaring gap between the astronomical hype and the actual real-world returns that businesses are seeing. So, welcome to this explainer on this $600 billion AI paradox, where we're going to unpack exactly what is going on with the world's most expensive technology. To really wrap our heads around the scale of this mystery, we have to look at this staggering number right here, the $600 billion question. Because here is the wild reality on the ground. Big tech, we're talking Amazon, Meta, Google, Microsoft, they are pouring an estimated $725 billion into physical AI infrastructure, building these massive windowless data centers just packed to the brim with $30,000 GPUs. But when you actually add up the revenue from the entire AI industry, even including major players like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google Gemini, they are only bringing in about $75 billion a year. That leaves a staggering revenue gap of well over $600 billion. And eventually, someone has to pay for all of this. And spoiler alert, that someone might actually be you. If you're sitting there wondering how these trillion-dollar tech valuations affect your everyday life, consider this a bit of an insider secret. Back in June 2026, Samsung and a few other chip manufacturers realized, hey, we can charge 10 times more for specialized AI high-bandwidth memory chips than we can for our standard consumer chips. So capital naturally flowed straight to the highest bidder, and the price of standard memory chips just skyrocketed by 5.5 times. Because of this artificial scarcity, Apple did something completely unprecedented. They raised the prices on MacBooks and iPads right in the middle of the year, directly blaming the memory chip shortage fueled by AI. So yeah, you're already paying the AI tax, even if you literally never use a chatbot.
All right, moving on to Section 1, Spectacular Enterprise AI Fails.
So if consumers are footing the bill, are enterprise customers making up the rest of that gap? Well, despite all the incredible hype, an MIT report found an incredibly sobering statistic. Roughly 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots are failing to deliver any measurable financial return. Honestly, this brilliantly illustrates what happens when AI is treated as a magic silver bullet instead of a strict engineering discipline. Just look at these spectacular corporate misfires from the last couple of years. Volkswagen's software division, Cariad, took a $7.5 billion loss trying to do a massive, monolithic AI overhaul. The key lesson there? Don't attempt big bang replacements. Then you've got Taco Bell, who deployed voice AI to their drive-thrus, which ended in viral mockery when a customer somehow ordered 18,000 cups of water, proving, for sure, you shouldn't deploy high-friction customer AI. The engineering firm ORUP actually had $25 million stolen by deepfakes simply because they didn't realize video and voice are no longer proof of identity. And Replit had a rogue AI agent completely wipe its production database because they failed to sandbox it and require human approval. Just absolute chaos.
And the frustration with these failures is reaching the absolute highest levels of business. Alex Karp, the CEO of enterprise software giant Palantir, actually went on live television to blast the AI industry for irresponsibly overselling these models. He said, "I am paying for tokens that create no value. These people are stealing the weights and alpha of my business, and they're creating a wealth tax." I mean, when the CEO of a company that sells software to the CIA and major global banks goes on TV to loudly say the AI industry has completely lost its mind on pricing, that is a massive wake-up call that the current enterprise model is fundamentally broken.
Which brings us to Section 2, the AI cost paradox. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the fascinating contradiction it shows. If the cost of generating AI tokens is dropping, why are companies blowing through their IT budgets faster than ever? Notice the stark contrast here. On the left, unit costs are plummeting, projected to drop by 90%. But on the right, aggregate enterprise AI bills are going up by 2.4 times. This is the consumption paradox. As AI gets better, we aren't just using it for simple one-off questions anymore. We're using agentic workflows. Instead of one prompt and one response, an autonomous agent might make 50 or even 100 back-and-forth calls to the model to reason through a really complex task, retry its failures, and verify its own work. So while the individual tokens are cheaper, the sheer volume is just exploding. And this explosion in volume has led to what's known as the token maxing trap. Companies wrongly assumed that more AI usage automatically meant more productivity.
Uber actually set up internal leaderboards to encourage their developers to use AI tools. And the result? Engineers optimized for the leaderboard. In a stunning miscalculation, Uber burned through its entire annual AI budget in just 4 months. The exact same thing happened at Microsoft. They rolled out Claude Code internally, and their engineers loved it so much that Microsoft actually had to cancel the direct licenses because the sheer volume of usage made it economically impossible to sustain.
Let's dig a little deeper in Section 3, the hidden cost iceberg.
Because those token costs we just talked about, shockingly, that is just what you see above the water. Let's look at a concept that catches almost every organization completely off guard. Looking directly at this KPMG cost model, you can clearly see the life cycle of AI expenses. Most businesses only ever budget for the run phase, that green box on the right. They think about token costs and maybe a little bit of employee training, but they completely ignore the massive, hidden iceberg beneath the surface. We're talking about the pre-development phase, harvesting and labeling all that data, modernizing infrastructure, and the development phase, which includes the huge cost of human capital to train these models and build out the actual applications. If you are only planning for the monthly subscription fee, the true total cost of ownership is absolutely going to sink your budget.
Let's move to Section 4 and see how this builds into the 5% playbook, how to actually win.
Because it isn't all doom and gloom. Let's look at the 5% of companies that are actually seeing a substantial return on their AI investments. They are following a very specific, actionable playbook. Step 1. They stop token maxing. They replace those volume-based leaderboards with outcome-based metrics. The team that ships the cleanest feature using the fewest tokens wins. Step 2. They route by task. Instead of using the most expensive, massive model for every simple little job, they use AI routers to dynamically pick the cheapest model that meets their quality bar. Doing this alone can cut costs by up to 35%. Some startups are even ditching the expensive models entirely for cheaper Chinese alternatives like DeepSeek when it makes sense for their bottom line. And step 3, they measure ROI at the task level, looking really closely at how specific workflows are actually speeding up. And measuring at the task level is absolutely critical because of a tricky phenomenon called invisible gains. Imagine a marketer who used to spend 12 hours building a massive competitive analysis deck. With AI, it takes them 30 minutes. That is 11.5 hours saved. But where does that show up on the company's profit and loss statement? Nowhere. It is completely invisible to management. The marketer just leaves work earlier and has zero incentive to report the extra time. This is exactly why AI ownership cannot sit with HR or IT. It has to sit directly with the business leaders, the VP of sales, or the head of creative, because they are the only ones who can track those task-level gains and actually translate them into measurable business value. Finally, Section 5, the capital cycle. Will the bubble burst? So let's zoom all the way out to the macroeconomic level. With $725 billion being spent on infrastructure and so few companies currently seeing returns, we have to address the massive elephant in the room. To understand if this bubble will burst, we can rely on the capital cycle. Because, history has a funny way of repeating itself. Back in the late 1990s, during the dot-com boom, telecom companies invested over $500 billion laying fiber optic cables everywhere, completely convinced internet traffic would double every 3 months. When that didn't happen fast enough, the bubble burst, wiping out $2 trillion in market value. Companies went bankrupt overnight. So the crucial point is this. What happened to all those cables? Well, they stayed in the ground. Years later, when real demand from streaming and smartphones finally arrived, that supposedly wasted fiber became the backbone of the modern internet. The companies died, but the technology survived and built the future. We are seeing the exact same pattern today. Billions are being poured into data centers, creating massive overcapacity long before the enterprise demand has fully materialized. Whether this ends in a sudden crash or a gradual stabilization where AI just becomes incredibly expensive, the ripple effects are going to be felt by all of us. But you now have the framework to watch this massive financial story unfold, which leaves us with one final, very real question to consider. Right now, today, are we building the infrastructure of the future? Or are we simply inflating the biggest financial bubble in human history? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and keep a close eye on those balance sheets.